Jim Balzer. Mike Holden.
Here.
Noel Deep.
Here.
Jeannie Long.
Here.
Mary Newfeld.
Here.
Danny Pyatt. JD Schrader.
I think he's on the phone.
JD.
JD, are you
He's
muted?
muted.
Here it comes.
JD, can you hear us?
You should be able to. I'm in the meet on my phone. Oh,
He's on twice.
JD.
There he is. Okay. He's unmuted down there.
So he responded?
I don't
I'm
know.
not coming through the. I think that might be audio on our end. You're definitely unmuted.
Justin, can you just put your phone on speaker so we can move on with the roll call?
Sure.
And tell him to answer yes?
Say yes.
JD.
JD, could you answer yes for the roll call?
Is he there? JD.
Oh, yes, I'm here.
Oh,
Okay,
Thank
let's
God.
move on. That's it, okay. We'll go on to public comment. And Tim, you have the book there.
Yep, we've got one signed in.
Okay. So we have one person signed in, and we also have two people who have contacted you to call in correctly.
Yes, yes.
And I think we'll start with you, Mrs. Quinlan. And you have up to 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, 5 minutes, 15 seconds. Okay. I'm sorry, since I'm distanced, I don't have a voice that projects, so I do have to remove this. My name is Allison Quinlan. I am a mother of 3 children here in Antico, 2 of which are directly affected this year by the decisions that are made on behalf of the district's administration and school board. I believe the board is familiar with my correspondence regarding the mask mandate. For everyone else present here today, I would like to state that I am highly opposed to a mask mandate. Not masks in general, but a mask mandate. For several reasons, which I will share in a moment. First, however, I would like to point out that we are here today in this organized manner because of groundwork that was entrusted to us from generations past. We all know that they placed in our care a document called the Constitution, which passes along a framework for success if we choose to respect it when moving forward during times like these. I am starting this conversation referencing the Constitution because the very first sentence, the preamble, says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity." Let it be known that a mask mandate on any level absolutely defies that intention, and this is only the first sentence. So now, moving forward with my concerns, my household in Danville has 5 people, and after hearing the school board's mask mandate, we immediately had 2 legitimate exemptions that applied in opposition to wearing masks. These 2 exemptions represented 2 separate people who had nowhere to go and no one to talk to regarding this. As the days passed and circumstances changed, and I'm referring to emergency order number 1, more legitimate exemptions came to the surface, and still we have nowhere to go and no one to share our confidential records with that prove our exemptions. And yet, I saw an even greater defeat waiting, but not for myself or for my family, who I knew I could protect. It was actually for all the students in the district that have these same exemptions as us, but do not have the documents in place to prove their exemptions, and they do not have the get these documents or diagnoses, and they do not have anyone willing to speak up and represent them. So I do want to thank the board members here today that took my request seriously and allowed for this discussion to take place, because it brought back hope that I'm not the only one that has compassion for those who have no voice. I would like to point out now that though the fear of COVID-19 transmission has been well represented on behalf of the healthcare system, there are many other issues that hold equal weight which have not been represented at all. Quickly, these concerns include the emotional and psychological impact masks have, the social and educational barrier that masks create, the educational standards that are lowered when masks are mandated, the civil liberties that are undermined when masks are enforced, the increase in face touching that masks encourage at a student level, and the inability for a cloth mask to stop this virus at a great cost to mental, social, educational, and civil health, which in turn takes a toll on our physical health as well. When the impromptu mask mandate was introduced by one strong voice and accepted with no resistance by the rest of the board, the realization that a handful of strong voices could speak on behalf of more than 2,000 people without bilateral communication quickly identified to me that we're facing more than a healthcare threat. We are facing an actual collapse in the foundations of our state government and educational system. Clearly, a mask mandate exceeds the authority that our board has, even if it is in the name of healthcare, if the board is not acting under its representative function, which was clearly not the case when the mandate was made on behalf of students and families without gauge each family's position on wearing a mask versus not wearing a mask. In closing, I would like to say that in recent months, I have seen the worst side of people emerge across all occupations and across all positions. People have been told by our leaders that they are not essential. People have been told by our experts that even though they appear to be approachable and healthy, no, they're actually an infectious threat. And most recently now, people are being told they have an obligation to wear a physical restraint, exemption or no exemption. If these attacks continue unchallenged and unmatched because the people have no mode to speak through and no voice to be heard, the message that is now being sent to our posterity is that the groundwork which we further entrust to you promotes deep conformity, but not individuality, not general welfare, and not the blessings of liberty that our core values have gifted to us. If I could be given one additional minute, I can address the motion supporter, otherwise I think that's fine.
You have reached your 5 minutes plus a little bit. Thank you for your comments, and we will take this up later when we discuss COVID issues on the agenda. So, who's up next?
Danielle?
Yeah,
Danielle, you're
can you
up.
hear me?
Yep, you have up to 5 minutes. Please introduce yourself and the topic you're speaking on.
Hi, my name is Danielle Yushka, and I hope my reception's okay. If not, I apologize. I would like to express my sincere gratitude for the school board voting in favor of the mask mandate. As a parent of 3 children that will be in school, one of which that is immune compromised, and understanding that the recommendations that our local physicians have put forth and all the experts, including expert physicians that are overseeing this pandemic, they are all recommending masking. So in my opinion, it is the right thing to do. I believe this is a medical issue, and I believe we need to leave it to the medical experts, and this is in what they are telling us. I think it's going to be very difficult for staff and children to keep their mask on, and I know it's not fun, and my heart goes out to everyone dealing with this, but statistically, numbers show that wearing masks helps prevent the spread of when you're talking, if you spit or if you sneeze. So I am in 100% agreement with the mask, and quite honestly, if I prefer the brick and mortar education for my children, and I really don't want to send them to the RVA, but without masking, I would have to consider that for the health of my daughter, and not only my daughter, as well as the rest of my family, but my parents and my grandparents become in contact with so many loved ones, and I would hate to infect them with when there's something as simple as wearing a mask to help prevent this sort of it. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And we will move on to who is our third person?
Jessica, are you available? Maybe she didn't.
Jessica, are you there?
Okay.
She's not on.
She's not on, okay. Then we will move on to COVID update.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We are getting closer to our goal of having a response for every student. Our building secretaries and central office personnel, principals, teachers, we're all reaching out to families from whom we have not heard yet and wanting them to give us an indication for in-purpose learning or remote. So far, we have roughly 1,500 responses, and by school, those vary between 26% remote learners currently at West Elementary on the lowest end, and 38% at North Elementary on the higher end. We expect those will change, certainly when we secure additional responses. So what will the next steps then be? Admin meets tomorrow, and really it'll come down now to elementary working together, middle school and high school, to take a look at those physical numbers, make sure they are scheduled appropriately to be physically distanced, and also we'll take a look at numbers of remote learners by grade level. We'll assign point people from our staff, some of whom already know who they are because their own physicians have recommended that they not work physically in our school setting. And so it'll start to take shape with the details that our families are craving. We crave them too, and so that will come in the next week or so, and schools will be reaching out. We are getting creative with even open houses, so I know tonight Tom Zamzo is here to speak on behalf of the elementary what they are planning. Tom, would you mind giving a brief update?
Sure. We are still reaching out to parents to get their input on whether the elementary students are going to be a remote learner or in person. So I just finalized my third grade numbers before I came here, so I know where all my third grade students will be. But what we're looking at scheduling for that, what we typically have that open house night, we're reserving that just for our 4K and 5K families and students. And most of that day on that particular in-service day is open for teachers to be working in their classroom. So the plan is to invite small numbers of parents and students in at 20-minute time slots, which would be about a 15-minute visit, and then a 5-minute gap for the next family to arrive. And we just feel, and the teachers certainly feel, that we need to have those young learners come into the building and see the physical space and meet the teacher. So we're planning that for our youngest students. And then our other staff, we are still working on an exact plan, but thoughts include invitations to sessions to students and their parents later in that evening. Typically, that's a 3:30 to 6:30 event. So maybe multiple Zoom invites where the teacher can talk to small numbers of families and students via Zoom, creating a video that they would link into the Zoom meeting. That would be a better picture of the classroom and the features within the classroom. So we'll be working, I know Mrs. Tassler is going to be working with the technology committee to help teachers if they wish to make a video, how to do that. Won't be anything complicated, probably using your cell phone. So that's what we have planned for that particular day.
Thank you. And Amy Downs is here from the middle school perspective and open house.
Hi everyone, thank you for a little bit of time. So typically we have a pretty robust summer school welcome back orientation. This year we're kind of shifting gears and we're going to make some orientation videos that we're going to title Red Rabbit Return, and we're going to make one specific for our fourth graders, which will really get them familiar with coming to the building, their specific hallway, and teachers that they might see with a lot of visuals and to follow planning. We also will do an orientation for all students returning because there will be some different procedures in place for things like lunch and also transitions, just to re-familiarize students with the procedures. We already got a lot of things in place for how to walk in the hallway appropriately and things, but just kind of taking it to the next level with distancing requirements. And then we also, as needed for maybe new students or fourth grade families who might feel a little uncertain, we have been scheduling some individual times for families to come in and tour. Right now, we've just been handling that as an office staff and running through that as needed, but if that becomes a greater need, then we'll work to schedule a little more firmly like Tom had shared. But right now, we're going to go through the video options and share those out when ready on our website and through parent.
Thanks, Amy. Today I watched a video made for the 8th graders in coming to the high school, same concept. But also in terms of high school, we had a question recently about elective courses and being available remotely. So Mr. Rogers, would you please speak to that?
Yep. I've been in communication with all of the elective teachers, so to speak, in terms of what we could make possible and what we couldn't make possible from a remote setting. And although there is some need for some different laptops in some cases, for example, MediaTek or Graphics 2, we were preparing some software updates and things on those laptops so that we can get those in the hands of some of those students who need them so that they can take part in some of that instruction. Agriculture, band, choir, like I mentioned, graphics, MediaTek, all of those we can definitely do remote options for. There is some we're running into some troubles with. For example, metals, autos, and woods. Just the level of material that, or the level of equipment that students would need at home to accomplish some of those tasks to prove competencies, we're running into some snags with. We could do some safety type protocols and have some instructional bookwork type curriculum for them, but the students, that's not what their desire is by taking a metals course or an autos course. So those are the question marks that I have right now about not being able to offer the autos, woods, and metals classes remotely. So right now we're advising families to see what happens for second quarter and perhaps return to in-person learning for those families or for all families that desire to. We could get them into some of those classes at that time. So those are the conversations we've had.
Okay, any questions for the building level? Then I'll turn it over to Jake for an update on buildings and cleaning. Specifically, we had a question, Jake, about the spray disinfectant that may affect materials that are left out.
Yep, so this spring, when COVID hit, there was a lot of unknown, we weren't really sure, so we erred to the side of caution. And went a lot heavier than we probably needed to in hindsight. But I still feel comfortable with the decision we made at that time. However, that did obviously have some negative effect to some exposed papers, things like that inadvertently got some damage. Since then, we've got new line of products, and I could talk about cleaning for a long time. I don't want to bore you and take up the whole meeting, but we got some new products and some new methods that will make things much more efficient as we go through. We will need some help from the teaching staff and IAs and things like that, making sure that papers are picked up, put away at the end of the night. We can't clean a surface that's covered with books and paper, things of that nature that we can work through internally, so that doesn't happen. But the techniques and the products that we use now are much different than what we used then. So that concern should not exist anymore, hopefully. Now, when we look at what's the scheduling is going to look like from the student side for lunch and classes and how the rotations are going to be, that's really going to change what we're going to do throughout the day. Most of our cleaning is still going to be at night. Obviously, if we have an area of concern through the day, we can address it a number of ways. We have some really nice products. It's the same products that all of Aspires has elected to go with since the outbreak. Really confident in how we're going to handle those situations. We will need a little bit of help from the teaching staff as the day goes on. We will have hand wipes available in all classrooms with gloves, so that if they have a concern or if they have 5 minutes between a couple classes, they can wipe down some areas of concern, the knobs, things of that nature. If that's their desire, they will be available to them. We do have to train them properly, which we will during the Welcome Back Week. I know that they don't have a lot of time, but we need to make them available in case they do need that. Or if one of my staff members comes in, if there's some supplies in the room that they can't use, it'll help the situation as well. We're really going to take kind of a all-hands-on-deck approach to start out the year. I don't really know how this is going to look. I don't think any of us do, from the class offerings to busing to any of this, really. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, so, a lot of my maintenance staff, I've already talked with them and asked them to jump on board, and myself included, we're going to be in there figuring out the best way to go through this. And it's going to change daily, weekly, monthly. So as far as exact details, they're going to continue to change, but I just wanted to talk just a little bit and allow you any questions that you had from the cleaning side.
I think we're going to trust you to do that, Jake.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Mary?
I was just going to say, Jake, when you said, all hands on deck, and if the teachers have 5 minutes, I think we have to remember that when the teachers have 5 minutes, that's probably when they're going to go to the bathroom, use the bathroom, because, they're eating lunch with them. There's going to be very little time for them to...
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted,
Yeah.
I meant all hands on deck, really more for my staff.
Yeah,
But there are certain teachers that have contacted me already asking, am I going to have wipes available? Do I have to bring my own? Do I need to have the kids bring them in?
mm-hmm.
And we just say, no. It's very important that we have the proper products.
Right.
And we have the safety data sheets that go along with those products. So, in years past, I know You know, when I was going to school, you got a class list, and sometimes there was
There were wipes on
sanitizing
them.
wipes or things of that nature on there. We're really asking staff not to do that. Even furthermore, we need to make sure that we don't allow that to happen now more than ever, because if a kid does have a reaction or any emergency, we need to have the proper SDS sheets that will be available to them. We need to know the products that they're getting in contact with so that we can address it properly and safely right away. So I certainly understand that the teachers have their hands full all day.
Yeah.
I just want it to be available because there's some that have contacted and asked if we'll have that ability, so.
Well, the thing too is, Jake, you're having the conversations now. You're not having them after the fact, and then everybody's asking the questions, the what ifs, the what ifs, the what ifs, so you can develop somewhat of a plan. Granted, yeah, it's not a static plan, it's a dynamic plan. It's gonna change, it could change minute by minute. But you've got those conversations going, so everybody's alerted to what's going on, so you're doing a fine job, keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Next, we have Nurse Jansen here, who with our community health partners developed these flow charts we want to share with you. And Darlene can speak to these. The first is for a student and staff with COVID symptoms, the steps that would be taken, and secondly, if there's a family member. Just so you know, these documents, these flow charts will be in our reopening plan for families, which we're finalizing along with those numbers of students per building, and that will be posted to our website just as soon as it's ready to go. So Darlene, anything you'd like to walk us through here?
Well, just as you look at this, I put this together because there were a lot of people asking what ifs. And I had contacted Megan, and we got Megan here from Public Health. So she also helped, she reviewed this, 4 times, I think, and made changes as the CDC made changes. But, you know, this is pretty basic, but, you know, if a student comes in and they have symptoms, we will be sending them home. Dr. McKenna had indicated there are a lot of illnesses that have the same symptoms: influenza, mono, strep. However, we can't differentiate between it. So, per Dr. McKenna, we are going to take everyone seriously as they could potentially be, and we are going to send them home and recommend they contact a primary care physician for further direction. The first one, if it was a student or a staff who was sent home, if they get tested, what happens if they're positive, what happens if they're negative? If they're having symptoms and it comes back negative, they can resume normal activity once the symptoms recover, as long as they've not had close contact with a positive case. So if they have a sore throat, they go in, COVID is negative, strep is positive, they can come back once they are deemed recovered from that, the symptoms improve, if they have not had close contact with a positive case, okay? If they test positive, then at that point, public health is going to step in and is going to contact them on a daily basis. They're going to ask for close contacts within the 2 days prior to onset of symptoms, and then they will start their contact tracing. They contact them every day, either, I guess it's every other day by phone at a minimum, otherwise there's text and there's emails as well. But they check on those. They also contact the close contacts daily to monitor for symptoms. They will give direction. If it is positive, they will give the direction when it is okay for them to come back to school. Okay? But the criteria that they will need to meet is on here. They have to be fever-free for 24 hours without medication, and the symptoms have to be improved, and it's been 10 days since onset of symptoms. Okay? They have to meet those criteria. If they are a close contact of someone, of one of our students, the question was raised earlier, would we have to close all the school districts. If one school is having a large amount of, or first off, would we have to send all the kids in one class home? If the classes are distanced, they wear a mask, everybody's got a mask on, and they use the hand sanitizer and good hand washing, the only people that could potentially be deemed as close contact are the one that is within the 6 feet of the positive case. The people over across the room will probably be just told to monitor symptoms, but they will probably not be told to stay home. It's the ones who are in close contact. And again, close contact is within 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes, with or without a mask. Okay? So they could potentially just have part of the class stay home instead of the whole class. If it is a class that intermingles amongst themselves in the classroom, we have no way of knowing who is going to be in close contact for 15 minutes and who isn't. So in those types of classes, we will probably end up having to have the whole class stay home for 14 days because we have no idea who the close contact people are at that time. Okay? If a student comes in on Monday and starts having symptoms, they will ask 2 days prior, who did you meet with? So they will, if the student had met some of their friends on Saturday and Sunday, the people on Saturday and Sunday would have to stay home, but not the people in the classroom. But any other day, Tuesday through Friday, if one of the students come with symptoms and they're tested positive, then that's when it'll affect other people in the classroom. Okay, does that make sense? All right. People who are close contact, they are encouraged to go and get tested in 3 to 5 days, but that does not negate having to stay home for 14 days because their symptoms could start and they could end up with symptoms of testing positive within the 14 days after contact. So they are asked to go or encouraged to get tested, but they still have to be at home for 14 days to monitor their symptoms. Okay? Any questions on students or staff?
I just have a question, and it's not really for you, it's for the principals. Do you think you're going to be able to have kids in a class not intermingle? No. Okay. That's a quick answer. Okay.
I mean, in all the conversations, it was reducing risk and doing the best we can and trying to mitigate and look at those strategies suggested by BPI and the CDC in order to reduce that transition. So that's, we made schedule changes and lunch changes and seating arrangement changes.
At the high school, kids wouldn't be necessarily intermingling quite as much. Is that correct?
Well, we've reduced it down to 4 periods instead of 8, so that reduces it a lot. There's still going to be some intermixing, but at a reduced occurrence.
I just mean at the high school, they're more likely to sit on their side of the room and not mingle with the kids on the other side of the room.
Well, I hope so.
Some will be better at it than
What about accessing their lockers? How does that happen? Are the students still accessing their lockers?
Yes.
And when they do that, they are in close proximity to each other. Is there some way that you guys can plan where, maybe every third locker or whatever? How you arrange their lockers when they come in? Something to look at so that, you're trying to minimize that contact between them?
Yep, we're assigning lockers instead of having them choose lockers. This year, when they choose lockers, they're usually choosing them close to their friends that they're more likely to be in closer proximity with.
So you can spread them out, the lockers?
As much as we can. We don't have a lot of lockers, but we are taking the students who elected to do remote learning and assigning them a locker within those, so,
So at least there is some gap between the students who are,
but there's not gonna be a gap
On-site.
between every locker, you know. It's-
but at least staggering the times that they access their lockers, if that is a possibility to consider.
We've looked into that, and I'm not sure how to do that without creating waiting periods for students that are then waiting in the hallway to get into a room or get out of a room. It's challenging.
One thing we could do too is encourage them not to stop at their locker, especially with the reduced number of periods. They may not need to visit each time.
And they can't bring their backpacks with them, right?
Correct.
Okay. If they could bring them with, what else could they use besides?
Darlene, can I ask you a question on this, the isolation part of it? It's a little ambiguous if you read it. The quarantine starts after the other person, isn't it, when they have been in contact rather than waiting until the index case? As I read this, this says that the first person who's positive, their close contacts will begin their 14-day quarantine only after that ill person has recovered for 24 hours or 10 days after their onset of symptoms. So are you saying that that first 10 days, the other person can still?
No, they are home because they are a close contact. This close contact would be for family member. That one. The student who has a friend that they've come in contact with, they don't live in the same household, they will start monitoring once the positive case, and they will only respond to positive cases. We are not going to
Suspected.
it's all based on the test results. So if a friend ends up positive and friend, they're, let's say boy number 2 is a close contact. Boy number 2 will be asked to stay home and monitor symptoms. They need to start, at that point, it's from the last day of contact. So if it is not a close family member, they're not in the same household, then that boy number 2 will stay home for 14 days and monitor symptoms, okay? If it is in the same household, where they've got definitely close contact, they will be asked to stay home and because they're obviously a close contact, but their 14 days of monitoring the symptoms, per se, won't start until the person who is positive starts to recover or is being recovered. Then that's when their 14 days of monitoring starts. So
That could be a whole 28 days then from what you're
yeah,
saying.
there is a potential that a student can be out for almost a month. Or a family member will be out for a month. If it's a mom, a dad, a brother, or a sister who has it, there is a potential that the siblings could be out of school for a month. During that month, they can do the remote learning at that point. But yeah, there is that potential.
And this will be handled by the county health authorities, then public health?
Correct. So public health will, once they get the positive, and they will start contacting, under FERPA, I believe we can release information as to who is in the classroom. I think I sent that all to you, the FERPA. So we will be able to at least give names, and then once they contact the person, they will be able to identify who's close contact, possibly who wasn't close contact, and then public health takes over from there.
Darlene, if I could ask just a simple layperson's question.
Sure.
I'm in close contact with somebody that tests positive. Why would I wait 14 days? Why don't I just go in and get tested?
You've got 14 days that those symptoms can start. Again, if you are a close contact, they do encourage you to get checked in 3 to 5 days. However, you still have to monitor your symptoms and quarantine for 14 days because your symptoms can occur anytime within 14 days from last contact from the positive case.
So I would
If
go
you
in
get
on day
tested
5 and
negative?
Yes.
So after 5 days, they get tested and they're negative, they still have to stay home for 5 days.
Yes.
You can be shedding, you can be infectious from 2 days prior to your symptoms manifesting, up to 14 days afterwards. So.
That somewhat leads me to the next discussion. Thank you, Darlene, for these, and that is our agreement to take temperatures of everyone entering the building. And some of you may know the CDC had indicated that perhaps that isn't necessary, and I'm not, saying one way or the other, but I did reach out to Megan and Ron. So I'm just interested if the board has any thoughts on that. One thought is that perhaps we would take the temps, staff could take their own temperatures, and then we would still take the temps of our youngest learners, but perhaps not those who are older. And the reason would be the variance in days, that it isn't necessarily a sure thing to identify someone with symptoms. So if anyone would like to weigh in on that.
What did county health, what was your opinion on temperature screening?
Yeah, so I just read CDC's recommendations. There's some valid points there, some children are asymptomatic, some don't ever have a temperature. You might have a temperature, so there's a lot of overlap with other illnesses, and we may be identifying children with other illnesses that also have COVID-like symptoms and requiring them, to take a test or stay home. So I think the best option is really start with the education at home for the parents to be responsible to do this screening of children before they even send them to school. Because if they we're already plus they're on the playground, they even came into school, they sat down, they've been in school, and there's already an exposure. So we start the education and encourage parents, don't send your children when they're sick. That's, I think, where it should start. Now, some students, are youngest kids, it might be a good idea if it's feasible to do that. But once they get into middle school, high school, they should hopefully be able to tell you when they're not feeling well, if they feel like they're not.
Well, at any cost, if you have somebody who has a fever of 100.5 or greater, as we are saying, should those children actually be in school then? Would they not be checked out? Wouldn't the parents take them in to be checked out because your child has a fever and they have a sore throat or body aches or whatever symptoms? And it's going to get difficult when the winter months come because, as they've alluded to, yes, you have your viral infections, you have your strep throats, you have mono, you have a lot of other infections, ear infections, anything can cause a fever. I have mixed feelings about it because if you also look at the CDC, because you're quoting the CDC themselves also say that in younger children, the temperature was the most common one when they looked at studies in school-age children as to what was one of the findings for the COVID. So it's an extra burden, but would the parents be willing to take that up and monitor their children at home? And if I had a child who had a fever, I would call the school district and tell them that I'm not taking my child into school, but rather I'll be making an appointment with their pediatrician or family physician. Yes, Deb.
If I may, I am still, I agree, once they get older, we want independence. I have faith in our students that they, at the older levels, will be able to come in and say, I don't feel well. In fact, we have a lot of kids that come in daily that say, can you please take my temperature, I don't feel well. So I am totally comfortable with the middle school, high school, kids knowing when they don't feel well and they're able to report. I would still like to recommend, if possible, to have the elementaries up to grade 3 have their temperatures taken. Again, because fever is very common and one of the first signs among the young kids. Also, these kids, when they get into school, they start working, they start playing, they're with their friends. they don't know how to express sometimes how they truly feel. The first sign you see is their eyes look funny, a lot of times. Their eyes look funny, so they get sent down, or they're starting to get flushed. They're playing, but they're starting to get flushed.
And by then, it's probably a little more difficult for you to figure out how many kids were exposed, and then,
By that
the
time.
number of children that you'll be sending home or asking to stay home might go up too.
Exactly. So the goal is to have them come in and go right into their classrooms. And then we hopefully are getting enough thermometers, so both the third grade will have one. So the teacher in one group will take their temperature, take the thermometer over to the other third grade class, and they'll take them in the classroom. And I'd like to give one specifically for 4K and one for kindergarten, because those little guys always come down looking for their temperature taken. This way, then it can be done right in the classroom. But I do think, I would like, for you to consider that the elementary still have their temperatures taken, just for that reason.
We had agreed that the plan may morph as we go, and, just a few weeks ago, we felt one way. I don't know if you want to call it people in infection.
Tom, you got a comment?
Yeah, usually we have parents fill out a health form. Maybe the student has asthma or a digestive issue where they get nauseous. How are we going to respond when a student comes in and doesn't feel well, and it's documented that they have some sort of impairment or health condition? Are they then following the same timeline as far as not returning up results in grades?
For every student that comes in, they will go through the same screening process, all the questions. We have a screening form that everybody who comes in with similar symptoms are going to be asked. And whoever is going to be in the isolation room is going to look under their health conditions as well. If there is a concern or a, question, they will have my phone. I will have my phone on me at all times. They are able to call me. I will come to the school if I need to, or we can mitigate it over the phone. But there will be times where it's going to be a little late. But based on, you learn the kids is what because there's a lot of kids that come in with the same issue all the time. And you learn which child comes in with stomach pain after they eat, okay, or nausea after they eat. They just need to lay down for a little bit. Those kids will be in the office, laying on the cot in the office, okay? But if they're coming in with a brand new onset, they're the ones that's going to be put into the isolation room. But there's a screening tool that all kids will be going through when they have similar symptoms to COVID. And I've got the screening forms that I will be putting in each of the isolation rooms.
Okay, Heidi, you had.
So I had just shared that with Arlene, the DPI and the CDC information that had come out regarding the universal screening. And the thing that it talks about specifically is that the younger kids, because younger kids, based on the CDC, is saying that they are very much more asymptomatic or low symptomatic, and that's why they're not advocating for one of the reasons for the universal screen, because you miss so much, especially in a low incidence area. So what they're trying to say, and that's not for everything, it was for K-12 schools that they're not recommending those screenings because of that reason and a bunch of other reasons. Because you find these false, you get wrapped up and you have, is it feasible? And is it the cost benefit? Are we getting what we are supposed to be getting out of doing that or not? And I just wanted to provide clarity because we were talking about fevers. The whole point is that they're saying a lot of those younger ones they could be transmitting without having a fever, so we're not even finding the kids that. So that was where it came from, and the API and is taking my guidance from the CDC as well. So that's why it was shared to reconsider, because a lot of this is very daunting, and we want to be safe, but we also want to, we've said we're going to follow the CDC protocols and the public health, and so that's why it's being brought up again.
Okay, and in response to Mr. Xantho's question, we have the self-attestation that we do at Aspirus every morning before you go in, or you have 15 minutes from the time you go in. And the questions, if I can read those out, are, do you have a new or worsening cough not related to a pre-existing condition? So when you talk about asthma, or if they have allergies, allergic rhinitis, things like that which cause a cough, or if you have a new or worsening shortness of breath that is not related to a prior condition, same thing, sore throat not related to an existing condition. There's about 15 questions that all of them, they bring up that same point about, is this related to something pre-existing? Otherwise, as Darlene said, you'll be sending the same kids home all the time. But if you have someone who's got that postnasal drainage that causes a cough, or they have asthmatics that, they come in, someone wore cologne or something strong on the bus, and they come in and they have a scratchy throat, if that is common for them, and as a school nurse, you'd probably be aware of those things. Those are the kids that you don't.
And I understand that, and I think, isn't it true, and Maggie just spoke about it, that the younger students are not as...
They're not as symptomatic
not
and
as transmitting, and I just personally am concerned about excluding the student for 10 days of school when we don't even know that they are contagious.
But these kids are not excluded until and unless they are positive or they have exposure to someone. Just because somebody has a sore throat, you're not sending them home and asking them to stay home for 10 days.
That's not...
We're asking
It's a
them
new
to go home and contact their primary
Right.
physician for direction. And based on what the primary physician says, it's really difficult. Like I said, our screening, and like Dr. G said, it says, do you have new or worsening shortness of breath? Do you have new or worsening cough? Do you have a sore throat? I mean, in most of these, we would send them home anyway. They automatically send them home and ask them. But because we can't tell.
We don't. We typically only send a student home if they have a fever.
Well, it depends on the child, because some of them come in and they say they have a tummy ache after they eat, so they rest and then they go back. So again, we learn the students. Again, we can't tell what's COVID and what's not. So we have to take every symptom that we have seriously, and they have to contact the primary physician. If we have someone we feel does have it and they're not being tested, then we've got that written on here too. If they're symptomatic and they're not going to get tested, they need to stay home. If the parent's not willing to take them in and get it tested, we have to do what we can to keep everyone safe. We have a lot of immunocompromised kids. We have a lot of kids who go home to their immunocompromised families. So we have to take these seriously until there's a vaccine. Unfortunately, we will be sending a lot more home. There's a potential a lot more will be staying home until, and at that point I'd be contacting Megan, and Megan and I would be talking through things because she's my right arm in all this. So.
And that's just one more reason that our remote learning policy has to be fluid.
Yeah.
We have to be ready to go should a child all of a sudden be asked to stay home for that amount of time, so that learning doesn't stop. I understand your concern too, Tom, but that's something that we haven't had before, so the remote option, that is.
And then, if I may, one more comment. On the internet, people are able to print off cards. And I talked with, and I guess we'll talk about that when we get to the mask. So any other questions on this? I know it's muddy, I do know that, and that's, but, if there's anything that's concerning, please let me know, and we can do what we can to give you the answer and get a hold of Megan.
Question about the testing then.
Yes.
Is there any possibility for you to work with public health to see if you have a point of care testing where you have a rapid turnaround? Because when you're looking at somebody who is community-based, not admitted, you're taking 3 to 5 days for those test results to come back. Is it possible to expedite that for the school district somehow, so that, if you have the 24-hour turnaround like we do for our inpatients, you rule them out or you rule them in and your tracing goes better, you're able to reach out to other people, try to mitigate the spread of the disease in that classroom or in the cohorts?
That's something I guess that we need to chat about.
So, just on public health, we're working on our testing strategies, knowing that the fall and winter months are gonna, we're gonna see increased testing need. So we're working on some partnerships and some MOUs, getting that in place so that we have the ability to scale testing when it's needed, so that we can have fast turnaround time, when there's an emergency. So that's something that we're working on, and I would expect that it would be in place, maybe not by the beginning of school, but shortly thereafter.
So this would be still through, do they have to come to your health department, or is this going to be on-site?
I think both, so, with the healthcare system, we're working with the healthcare system for that, and also possibly, doing something, we have a small capacity to do testing at our locations, possibly.
So we will talk and we'll try to get a plan together that if, the plan could say if we have a student, we could just call up public health, say we have, John Doe coming over, they're having these symptoms,
And the parents are accepting of them getting that done?
and of
public
course,
health.
we would talk to the parents. One of the things Dr. McKenna talked about is possibly even trying to expedite getting their access, is that if parents are in agreement, I would be contacting either the provider of the hospital, or the COVID hotline, saying, we have John Doe, these are the symptoms, we are going to, we'd like to send him over and be tested, and if the parent agrees, and we have it set up, all they have to do is go from the school to the hospital, get swabbed, and go home. That's one of the things that Dr. McKenna had mentioned, and would be something that I could certainly work on with Megan, and even possibly have them just go right to public health and be swabbed.
Did you, Dr. Deep, what about Mo Lake tests? I hear people go in there and they get the results immediately. Do we accept that? Is that test just not as accurate? That's why it's so fast.
Well, the PCR test has a high sensitivity and specificity. If they are doing the rapid response test, that is not as accurate. Sometimes you might be falsely lulled into confidence that it's negative when it may not be. So if it is the nasopharyngeal swab that they're doing, that's the PCR test, then I think that is the standard right now. And then people ask about the antibodies, but that is just evidence of prior exposure, not anything to do with current infected state. So I'd have to check into that. If that's the PCR, then that's good.
At daycare. So she had to go home and get tested, or she couldn't come back for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gonna be the standard. If you're in school, you got a runny nose or a cough, and you're pretty confident it's not allergies, you stay home until you have a negative test, plus a bunch of days.
Well, yes, that's what I was hoping, that if you have a point of care testing where your turnaround time, right now in the hospital, I think it's less than a day. Sometimes you send it out in the morning, you have a result by evening. So you have a plan in place. And if you have somebody who probably is in that gray area between a pre-existing condition-related symptoms and something probably new, probably not. And, you know, if it's for their peace of mind, for the student, for their family, and for those around them, because sometimes you'd have to think about it because the other children's parents might come up and be upset, and it's a natural thing that people do, you know. If I'm exposed to someone, I always worry about whether you use the proper protocols or not, were you wearing adequate protection. It will be the same thing for the other families. So maybe having a rapid turnaround might probably help not just that one student, but those around them. So those are probably some of my thoughts for the school district to look at if we can make those arrangements in place.
So, Dr. Deek, did you feel okay then about letting go of the temperature checks after third grade?
Well, if my personal bias would be to encourage them to do it, and if you have the ability to test everyone's temperature when they walk in, that will be nice, or get on the bus, because as I said, you know, people are quoting from the CDC, but if you actually go on the CDC site and you look at it, they also say that school districts have to look at the possibility of minimizing that spread on the school buses too. So that brings you back, I'll have to pull that up and see if they have that on there, but I'm very sure that's what they talked about, trying to limit the exposure for other people. So if that's the case, then you probably have to consider it. I don't know if the parents would be willing to monitor, and if the older kids are willing to monitor their temperatures at home. And something that they attest to, or, you know, you just ask them when they come in, you know, did you check and did you have anything that is suspicious?
Okay. So, is there anything else before we go on to?
If we wanted to bring up public comment, and then I just have Mr. Schofield with his activities and athletics update.
Okay, well, let's just do public comment here right now. If anybody wants, we have two people speak publicly about masks here, and anybody on the board have any comments on that? Or any reason to think we should be doing something other than what we had decided before, which was to require masks?
I guess I just want to reiterate and kind of summarize what we spoke about last week. I know that we were covering a lot of topics, and so I took some notes and spoke with people within the community. I just wanted to relay that to everybody to reaffirm our decision and the thought process behind making that decision. I have about 10 things here. It should be fairly quick. But number one, until community spread of COVID-19 in Wisconsin is low, it will continue to be a threat to our staff and students. Education of our students is a priority. However, we have to maintain the health and safety of educators and staff within our schools so they can continue to provide the best education in our current environment. Additionally, this is more of a personal belief, but staff that work within our school district did not sign up to be frontline workers. They did not come into the school district thinking that they would have to defend students against hostile intruders. They did not come into the district thinking that they would have to risk their lives to educate their students. So I think that while we put a lot of focus on our students, which we should, we also need to consider the well-being of our staff as well. And I feel that that's something that we're really underplaying in these discussions. So I would just like to reiterate the importance of our commitment to supporting our staff. Number three, our district will provide resources to support the emotional and behavioral needs of students, i.e. we will respond to trauma of living through a pandemic and the anxiety of having to wear a mask. And these are just an example of some of the stressors that they'll be dealing with. And this is something that we've been addressing locally within our district, and I feel that we're doing a good job with, so good job to that team. Number 4, we are responding to this incident through the lens of creating health equity for our staff, students, and community. Number 5, the science is changing, and as this happens, our policies will evolve to adapt to the circumstances, and I think that's evidence tonight that we had discussed earlier. Number 6, the rural-urban divide. Our district is in a very rural area, meaning we have limited access to healthcare capacity. And from a health equity lens, not all students have access to healthcare. This is not a bash against Aspirus, this is just a fact that we do not have the same amount of resources that larger cities do. And we need to take that into consideration. And the disparity between the healthcare that our students have compared to other districts is limited. And so I think that we need to take a real hard look at the pressures we're putting on our lower income families with our decisions. Number 7, we're going to be dealing with this pandemic for a long time. We're working with local health, state, and federal agencies to make the best decisions to ensure the continued safety and education of our students. Our decisions are not made in a bubble. We extensively collaborate with partners to implement evidence-based best practices and following science. Number 8, regardless of any decision made, there will always be disruptions for staff and students given our current situation. And then finally, there were several community members that reached out to me talking about the legality of the issue and how it goes against the Constitution. And I would just like to cite that this falls under Wisconsin State Statute, Chapter 323. If anyone here would like to discuss this more, I'd be more than happy to, because I happen to know this very well. So this falls within the governor's emergency mandate powers, and it's legal. There's not much anyone can do about it. We are in the pandemic. That is a declaration of emergency, and that gives the governor specific powers, and he's exercising those powers to keep people safe. So I know a lot of people disagree with that, but we are within the bounds of the state. We are following the state statutes to exercise safety. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. That was
Well,
very
eloquently
good.
stated.
Okay, thank you. Just one more thing on this. Mrs. Quinlan said that, she has kids who have whatever conditions, and there's nobody to reach out to. How is that?
No, I don't think she said her children, she said other children.
Other children, okay.
I meant it to understand that she was able to get some exemptions for her children, but other families do not have that luxury or have the financial ability to pay for those services was what
But if,
I understood her.
I guess
And
what
we
I'm
will-
asking is if people think they have an exemption,
Absolutely. In fact, our staff has reached out to families, our case managers have contacted families of students with IEPs directly that we think might, need an accommodation for a mask, et cetera. So.
Or even for the teachers who are teaching those children.
Exactly. So I like to
Those
think we're
clear
very
plastic.
accessible. I know I responded to an email and Heidi responded to one of her emails. So if anyone's listening or any other community members, just call your child's school or central office and we'd be happy to work through any questions you may have.
okay,
If we possibly can, yes, if we know, if they put something down on their health form, we have it written on here what their health conditions are. And if it is something that prevents them, some people get anxious when they have their face covered. Okay, so maybe we can use a shield. We can do things to help at least decrease the spread of the large particles. The aerosols are the ones that really travel, and it was on the news today that it could travel up to 16 feet unmasked and unprotected in a classroom without a lot of ventilation. So we can look at every individual. However, on the internet, you can print off masks or cards that say, due to a medical condition, I am not able to wear a mask, and there are a lot of people in the community actually laminating them because they want to see if they work. Dr. McKenna said that we are not to accept those. If at all possible, we would like something from a physician, if able, saying, we cannot, my child is unable to wear a mask, this is the reason. We do not want it from a chiropractor. We want it from a medical physician. So that he does not think those and I know for a fact a few people who have done it because they decided they didn't want to wear a mask in a store. So we really, if it's something, you'd like to discuss, but he did not want us to accept anything without medical backing.
Okay. And Heidi, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, to expound on that, when students with disabilities, we're gonna make those decisions through the IEP team. So they won't necessarily all have a doctor's excuse because some of them, it might not necessarily be medical, it's based on their disability. So those teams will talk about but we're still encouraging, and I've had multiple conversations over the last 2 weeks with parents about whether it's a mask that's, it's clear, whether it's a face shield. We're gonna work with our students and our families, and we had a really good conversation today, some administrators that will carry over tomorrow regarding how we're going to manage this with students who come from a variety of backgrounds, who believe, don't believe. We don't want to make this into a discipline issue. We want to make this a public health, and part of that is educating our families as quickly as possible about it, because we only have a couple of weeks left. I mean, these days are like ridiculous. So that's part of what we're talking about but then the other side of it is, if it's a public health issue and we're saying that the board says you have to wear a mask, how are we going to, when we do have those issues where it comes up? Because we don't want kids to be, I can't remember if Clint said it today, or, we're removing kids that are already marginalized, okay? A lot of those kids already have issues with marginalization, and now we're removing them from school or something like that. So we want to be really looking at this from that lens as well, how we are working with our students and our families to make sure that we are doing it, but we don't turn it around into discipline. So
Okay.
we'll have more discussion on
I think that answers my question.
Okay. Tom?
Yes, for athletics and activities, we've been meeting a lot with Great Northwest, or Great Northern Conference athletic directors, the WBC for middle school, and the WIA has another meeting actually coming up on Friday, the board control meeting, which they have not updated and given out their fall guidelines yet. We are still abiding by following through our summer guidelines that we have gone over, and the health committee and the administration, and that's what we have been following all the way up until now, continuing to follow. But the sports of girls swim, cross country, and girls tennis are set to start on August 17th as of now. So a week from yesterday, they are coming up. And then the WI pushed back the start of the higher risk sports as soccer, football, and volleyball to September 7th. Last week, the decision was made with the GNC and Wisconsin Valley Conference, of which we're a part of for middle school, to cancel the middle school season. And a lot of districts right now are looking to go intramural for middle school. We have a running document that we are sharing ideas and putting through on what that might look like. And that would not start until earliest date, September 14th. So at least a few weeks into school, moving to school and everything before we even look at that. But as of now, we are doing a conference-only schedule for athletics, 9 through 12. And that is what is slated for now. And, like I said, Friday, we'll probably get a lot more information coming from WIA.
Thank you. And that concludes our COVID update.
I'm sorry. I've been quiet for about an hour and
I
15 minutes. and that's-
I noticed.
Well, slightly, Tim, not totally.
So, just a real brief update with busing. Just so the board is aware, this year, we have required that families request transportation. And so we sent out letters to all families that were, received busing last year. And we asked that they respond to our request by Monday of this week. And so far, we have about 350 students that have signed up for transportation. We have 25 bus routes normally scheduled. We have had folks within the city limits that we have told we would not have transportation available. As we get the numbers, Mallett's is still working to assign students to buses. We may open that up. I think that averages 16 to 17 students per bus. That would certainly fall within the guidance that we've seen. But I know there are families that aren't necessarily happy with some of our decisions regarding that. So we'll develop plans as we go, and as people request them, we'll put them in. But from this point on, we can't guarantee that they would necessarily have busing that first day of school.
Okay. And then we will go on to new business, and we'll start item A, board member meetings and legislative report. And if anybody has anything to report, and I just want to say that if anybody is interested, I have a copy of the WASB resolutions here. And I think I sent everybody an email that said if you want to propose a resolution, go ahead. But anyway, then we'll go on to staff engagement survey.
So months ago, the board had directed us to take a look at securing school perceptions for a staff engagement survey. So I had been in contact with Sue Peterson, our rep. However, then COVID hit. So my question tonight is, I contacted her again, and some districts, it's about 50-50. Some are moving forward with a staff engagement survey that has an introductory section based on COVID and their responses that way, and then it asks through directions to, okay, now consider your employment pre-COVID. So it's really up to the board. Should we still go ahead? Our target month was October before. Should we still go ahead with that survey, or would you prefer to wait post-pandemic?
I think you already are asking much of the staff in this situation. There are so many unknowns. And I don't think it will be accurate. Everybody will be stressed out, and people are right now.
They are.
Yeah, it has affected everybody. You know, as some people have said, you know, people have been rude to one another, and it's not the people that we knew before. It's almost like it's unearthed some of those less favorable situations. But I would probably be in favor of postponing it at least until the end of this semester and see how things go, and maybe if the board agrees, we could probably readdress this sometime in January or whenever and see the second half of the year.
I agree with Dr. Deep.
Okay.
Is it normally sent out at the beginning of the year?
Districts can determine when they would like. We had decided as a district to set a date in October. So the suggestion is to table it until second semester and discuss again at that time. I will let our rep know. Thank you.
We haven't done a survey in a long time, Jim.
Okay.
And so from my perspective, I kind of hate to put it off because we've been putting it off for years. But I agree with you that this is
We
not
picked the wrong time to get that survey done. I don't think it will be accurate, and it will just add to the workload.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
So
you.
we'll bring that back maybe in January or so. That makes sense. Move on to item C, food service update.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
We'll start out with, today we ran direct certification, and out of our students, we had 1,007 direct certified for free meals, and 113 direct certified for reduced meals. So that's already 54% of our student population, and we tend to run that every single week, so we'll run that again next week, Tuesday, and then we run it throughout the whole year. So we have a lot of students in need of meals and financial help. So this year, as far as breakfast and lunch, our prices will remain the same as last school year. We can do this due to the excess cash balance that we had when we ran our PLE in January. So we don't have to raise the cost this year. And then also breakfast will continue to be universal free breakfast at elementary and middle school, so 4K through 7 will still have free breakfast. At the high school, breakfast for paid students is $1.50, and for reduced it's 30 cents. So it's not that high of a cost. This year, with all the changes, food service will have quite a bit of safety measures that we're doing. We will be using a disinfectant on all of our tables and surfaces, and then going back and doing sanitizing. That will be done at all of our elementaries, middle school, high school, on all of our counters and all of our appliances too. Now, as far as breakfast and lunch, each school is kind of unique with what they're doing. At most elementaries, they're going to have breakfast and lunch for 4K and kindergarten in their gyms, because it's just, those guys are so little, it's going to be kind of messy. And for the other grades, the 1st through 3rd, and it depends, because some schools, you guys are going to be in your cafeteria for all of them, they're still deciding. Yeah, so, and things, could change depending on how they go in the classroom too. I mean, if breakfast is a total disaster and they're spilling everything, maybe that isn't the way the teachers wanted to go either. But we're going to be delivering like entrees and juices, so that once kids get to the classroom, they can have breakfast in the classroom. And for lunches, everything is recommended to be disposable and to be covered. So I've been altering menus and changing it to see how food's going to fit in this kind of container. So, and that's something that they do recommend disposable, but there may be times where we might not be able to get them. So things like that can change also. Or we may end up having to go with the styrofoam trays if we're not able to get something that's totally covered. Now, at the high school, we're going to have 3 lunches. I do believe all the students will be facing the same direction, like towards the front windows. And we're working on getting different tables set up and getting rid of all the circle tables so that you can't really congregate. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of chaperoning that needs to be done when they, on the first week or 2 at least. And then by that, they should be into the routine and those should be done. Another thing that we're planning is we're planning on doing a packed breakfast lunch to have available on Thursday when the students leave, so that they do have that for Friday. We still have to determine, or still working on the process of how we're going to identify which students want this. So the first week of school, we may have more of them available, and then find out from the parents. I don't know if we're going to do a survey. We don't really know how many people really respond, but the secretaries will be back on Monday, and I was going to talk to them to see what they think would work best with their groups on how to find out about their kids.
Sarah, could you just explain a little bit, what's the difference between the summer feeding, which we went through with COVID, versus the National School Lunch Program?
Well, as soon as the COVID pandemic started, we were able to change our meals from being National School Lunch, School Breakfast Program, over to our summer feeding program. And with the summer feeding program, they made lots of changes throughout the year so that even the students didn't have to show up to get the meals. And with the summer feeding program, the meals are also free because we are in a rural area. And we have a high need population. So all of our meals, the breakfast and the lunches were free to the students. Now with the National School Lunch Program, when I was on a DPI call, they told us that they will not be doing the seamless summer and the summer feeding into the school year because they just can't afford it. So we'll be back to National School Lunch. So that means for all these students that are free, their meals will be free. All the students that are reduced, their breakfast will be, like the elementaries and middle school, their breakfast will be free, but their lunch will be 30 cents or 40 cents. And then your paid students at the elementary level, theirs will be $2.35 a lunch. Middle school, $2.60 a lunch, and at the high school, $2.85 or $3, depending on which line they go to. So when they take those meals for Friday, we would end up charging their account for those meals. Even if they're free, they still have to be counted on their account. So that's what changes with summer program. We just have to check off how many meals we served. With the National School Lunch Program, the breakfast program, you have to actually have their ID.
So is it realistic then to think that we could provide lunches for remote learners?
Well, we're also looking at that because at the end of our summer program, we had it for 2 days because we ended on June 30th. But for the rest of the week, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we packed grocery bags. So they had 4 meals, 4 lunches and 4 breakfasts in those meals when they came to pick them up on Tuesday. So that is something that we could do, and we have enough workers at our kitchen, because if we're using these, they're not going to be washing a lot of trays. I mean, they're going to be able to clean the table, but they're going to have time. So in that sense, that's another thing where once we know who the remote learners are, we will send that out to them and let them know that they can get meals. The one thing is, though, if they are paid, they would be charged for each one of those meals. I can see more work if they're free students that they opt to do that. But the other thing is, we were talking about having them pick them up, like either the Friday or the Monday or whatever works, because as far as transporting like we did last year, I don't have a lot of money, so.
Well, and our buses will be used.
With kids, yeah.
Right. With regular routes, so they weren't being used, that was the difference.
Yeah, so we have like a plan for what we would do for the virtual if they were going to be coming to pick up meals. And that'd be something that they would have to stop between a certain time to pick those up also.
If they're unable to afford to come in, is there any possibility of considering volunteers or somebody that can drop those food packets off?
Is there any possibility of dropping lunches off at some location?
Well, the only thing is that they don't pick them up, their accounts are charged.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
there's always that chain of
yeah.
control of that item because it's food and you don't want something to go wrong. So it would have to be someone that you trust and someone that can deliver to that house or to the parents or some adults.
And they can, with the virtual learning, it doesn't have to be the student picking up, the 5 meals. It could be a neighbor, it could be whoever, but.
But someone that's
That they.
that's okay by the parents to do that.
Right.
So they could have their neighbors pick it up.
Mhm. Just like we did with summer feeding, they do give you a little exemption on those, but
Okay.
How do you address the beverages?
what's the kind of, for our high school, basically when they go through, we're gonna put the milk on top.
What about water? Are you getting the bottles?
Water, as far as if we're doing sales, I mean,
Well,
for our
how are they going to get it with their meals if they're, they probably use the fountains, I don't think,
they're supposed to have water bottles. There's
Yes.
like carry a water bottle with them.
We won't have students drink from.
Yes, the water fountains
right.
have to be
So
done.
we'll have water filling stations. We have them now in each of our schools, and so they're encouraged to bring their own container, don't share it, and then fill it as needed throughout the day.
Okay.
The other thing, so it's still a work in progress. Which is all nailed down, it's still a work in progress to see what's gonna happen. And, as far as, with our pizza companies, we are going to be giving them 65% of the estimated cost of the pizza that we would have purchased this past spring from them. So the total that we'll be sending the 3 pizza vendors is $6,800. It's $6.19. So hopefully they'll want to sign on for this next year.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
I don't have anything else.
Then we're gonna go on to North Elementary parking lot update.
All right, so always and even now more since the consolidation, we've had some parking issues at North. We've tried different ways that have somewhat been helpful in the past, sometimes have not. And really what the long and the short of it is we have staff parking on the roads, making it not only unsafe for them, but also for the city to do their routine maintenance, whether it's snow plowing or street sweeping or whatever. Straight across the road from the school, there's a small parking lot that the city has right now for the water treatment facility there, that we have had an ongoing agreement with them to use. That has helped relieve some of that, but it still has not been enough. So I approached the city and talked to them if we could expand that parking lot. It's obviously all their property. The cost to improve it to a parking lot would be ours. The cost for all maintenance would be ours. The property would remain theirs. And we would have basically it's a lease agreement for $1 for 10 years. We would have to provide them proof of insurance and take on all costs associated. At the end of the 10 years, we would have an opportunity to notify them and automatically renew for another 10 years, and that will continue on. This is the agreement that's written up by Mike Winter. I've talked to the Public Works Committee, and I'm forgetting the second step of this, that we've had approval from those two so far. Planning Committee, sorry. And now it goes to the full city council for their approval tomorrow night. Given their approval, then they would sign the document and I would bring it to you at your next monthly board meeting. But kind of just wanted to get a sense of if we're going in the right direction, so I can speak logically to it tomorrow. And obviously to give you a heads up so you know what I'll be asking you to sign in 2 weeks.
Okay, sounds good. Any questions on that?
How much bigger do you want to make the parking lot?
It would basically, it would more than double the amount of cars that can fit in there right now. I think we can fit roughly 12 right now. So with that, we'd be able to fit right around 24. They have to design it. We need to allow for one one fire hydrant access, storm sewer, and then obviously always keeping in mind the cities need to perform theirs, so we'll get that all drawn out perfectly, but it should provide somewhere around that 24, maybe a couple more total parking spots that would alleviate any of the road parking.
Any idea on the developmental cost of this yet, or is that still a
So the
figure
storm-
that's out there?
The storm sewer, I don't really have that piece figured out. As far as the tree removal and that, I have budgetary estimate of $3,000 for new trees. The portion for the prep and installing the storm sewer, I don't, and then the paving cost, I'm hoping to keep 10 to 15,000 within that. We work with the county quite a bit, so that they give us, they're mandated in their prices they can. And that's typically what we've done, so, I'm confident they'll treat us good on that, but, the design part from the city to get that storm sewer timed in properly was important to them for obviously reasons, and given, their current workload, they haven't quite pinned down those details for that portion of it, but, yeah,
No, that's good, thank you, Chief, that's a good rough estimate.
Okay. Any other questions? And, yeah, I think it's a good thing you're going forward with. So we will go on to open enrollment. Budget impact.
I want to thank Mary Kay for providing me with some updated information, and then with Bree Kratz from the high school with giving me some information from RDA. And I don't like to typically sing the blues, but at this time of the year, we've got about 25 to 30 new staff members that we're hiring. And just the benefits alone for those people can have a huge impact on the budget. And when we start looking at open enrollment and the activity that we're seeing with parent requests and emails from the buildings of people considering options for moving all over the place, I get really nervous at this point of the year. And Mary Kay provided me with an update today where we have 179 students open enrolling out of the district as an estimate of parents that are requesting that. They might not go, but I was budgeting 157. So when you're looking at that difference, that's a little over $8,000 a student. And then when you combine that with the activity that we've had with parents choosing to enroll at RDA, last year we had 75 students, full-time equivalents at RDA. This year we've got, right now, 125. And those two line items, you're talking over $400,000. And the budget simply can't sustain those kinds of expenses. Open enrollment tuition has gone up since last year with the same number, almost 5%. Our revenues under the revenue limit for those same students that are open enrolling out is almost zero. So at this point in the year, we don't know where the benefit package is going to slide in, whether these new teachers are going to take insurance, single family. But I don't have any wiggle room. And we will know on the third Friday in September where students are at on that particular day. And we'll have a better estimate. But it's likely if these numbers hold true, I will probably not be submitting a balanced budget to the board. And, it's just a direct reflection of COVID where, parents want certainty. They're choosing the RVA because it's an established virtual program. And it's just a result of COVID. And that's not talking about, I don't know where we're going to be with parental choice. And we won't know that until the first day of school. So I would I think with the board too, what it means is, you know, we've typically had our budget hearing in August. And you see more and more districts, because of open enrollment, keep pushing that timeline back. And I think this year at the at the budget hearing, I'm gonna ask that we move it to October in preceding years. Because I think there's just too many unknown information. You know, I can't, with open enrollment being projected to be about $1.5 million in expense, that's something, you know, I would really like to fine tune that number before we go through the effort of preparing the budget. There's just too many unknowns at this time of the year.
Tim, can we count the kids that are in remote learning? For
Yeah,
open?
those will be, likewise, RVA students are our students.
We can count
as
them
our
on third
open.
Friday too?
Yes,
Oh,
but
okay.
but it's an additional cost that we wouldn't incur if they were in seats in our building.
Right.
And to answer your question, yes, every student who takes the remote learning option, we count on our enrollment. For the first time in my short tenure here, I've had calls from districts like Wausau, who, as you know, they are opening completely virtually. And some families do not have options then for their children because they can't stay home from their jobs. So we may, and I don't mean to say that we'll be okay because of this, but we've had a few calls. We may, on the flip side, have families choose to open enroll because we are offering in person as of now. So it is, you're right, it's just devastating, and we're not the only district impacted, but certainly we are impacted, and I appreciate the update.
Yeah, because the open enrolls ins and outs were negative about 140 students, and at 8125, that's a big
Right.
number.
Okay.
Good luck with that.
Good luck for us. Okay, we're going to go on to action items, and we got consideration to approve 2021 CESA 6 contracts and agreements.
I move the board approve the 2020-2021 CESA 6 contracts and agreements as presented.
Second.
Any discussion or questions from anybody on the board?
Okay, what's the total cost of the CESA 6 contracts?
$253,057, and that's an incredible amount of money. It does come from grant dollars, so it won't impact fund balance or anything like that. And this is the one set of contracts that Kelly negotiated prior to her leaving. I was able to tweak the others, which you'll see in a minute, but keep in mind too that it doesn't seem like it when you look at this amount, but we would like to wean away from CESA 6 in upcoming years, because now we're adding another year to our implementation. So hopefully that will dwindle.
And is this the third year we've been with CESA 6?
This is the beginning of the third year of this reading series?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
And it's all grant money?
Yes.
Okay.
Then we'll go ahead and do a roll call.
Alzer?
Yes.
Holdig?
Yes.
Deep?
Yes.
Long? Yes. Newfeld?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
And Mary?
Yes. Okay, we will go on to item B, consideration to approve the 2021 CESA 2 service agreement.
I move the board approve the 2020-2021 CESA 2 EL coordinator service agreement as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions on this?
Grant money?
Yes.
Okay.
all of these are, just to be clear.
Any other questions or comments? And another roll call.
Oldick,
Yes?
Deep,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Balzer,
Yes.
and Mary.
Yes. And item C is consideration to approve CP consulting, coaching plan, and contracts.
I move the board approve the 2020-2021 CP Consulting Coaching Plan and Contracts as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Mary's asking if this is also grant money?
It is.
Is this Connie Persig, is she a professor now at Madison or Minnesota or something? She still has time to get this done.
Not that I'm aware of, JD. Her consulting firm is her full-time business.
I would have bet money that something on LinkedIn showed up today about her taking on, maybe it's just part-time or something.
Oh,
Maybe I'm wrong though.
well, if it showed up today, I could be wrong.
Okay, any other questions? Then we'll go ahead with the roll call.
Deep,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Balzer,
Yes.
Oldick,
Yes?
and Mary.
Yes. We'll go on to item D, report of employee resignations and retirements.
I move the board approve the resignation of Nathan Hampshire, middle school special education teacher, and Jessica Mead, Unified School District of Antigo board member.
Second.
Any questions or comments? I'd just like to say thank you to Jessica for her service on the board. And then we will go ahead and do a voice vote on this. So JD, if you want to unmute and be ready for our voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I guess on that, as long as we're at this point, we would talk about having getting somebody on the board in Jessica's place, and I would propose that we go ahead and advertise, and we have applications submitted by the next COW meeting. Actually, before the next COW meeting, have them submitted, and we would do interviews at the COW meeting, and then we would appoint somebody at the September board meeting.
Sounds good.
That sound agreeable to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll take care of the details between you and Mary Kay of when those applications actually have to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And it would want to be in time for us to be able to read them before that COW.
Okay.
Andy, so I can't remember, so we, at the September committee meeting, we do the interview and then we vote, but they're officially appointed at the monthly meeting?
I think
That's how it was for me.
that's how it was for you.
Yeah.
And I think that would be proper. Yeah. Yep, I think that's how we'll do it. Okay, so that takes care of that.
Where do you advertise, Andy?
Paper.
How does it get advertised? In the paper?
I would say paper, school Facebook page,
Facebook page.
Shopper's Guide.
Shopper's Guide.
Okay.
Does anybody think anything else needs to happen? Okay. Report of district new hires.
I move the board approve the following new hires as presented. Alex Heine, Tech Ed teacher, Susan Paget, high school math teacher, and Tina Verhagen, high school administrative assistant.
Second.
Any questions or comments on these? Then we'll do a voice vote on this. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then we'll just confirm the next meeting time will be Tuesday, September 8th at 6 PM in the middle school IMC. And
Motion to adjourn?
go. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thanks for joining in, JD.
You guys have a good night.
You too. Drive safe, JD.